Hi everybody, welcome back. So I thought I'd do a quick little video on I don't even know what to call this thing. The Doug and Charlie hybrid car. So it's all 1/35th scale. And I thought I'd just show you what I cobbled together to make this. So the first part, the chassis, and the wheels and everything are from this kit. The M923 A1 Bigfoot US Army 5-ton truck by Italeri, so 1/35th scale. That's kind of what it looks like. Okay, so essentially I used the chassis and the wheels and tires. Okay, and one of the bumpers and other pieces from that. The tank engine was a T55 tank engine from Chex Model Kits. And they make it out of resin. And then this, it's called a V55A, which goes into the T55 tank. Again in 1/35th scale. And then from ICM, this is the car. And this is the Cadet K38 Cabriole Limousine, a World War II German staff car. So apparently there was a lot of these cars produced in Germany, made by Opel. And I guess at the beginning of the war, World War II, a lot of the cars were commandeered and used by German staff officers for personal transportation and things like that. So there's that. So this was the car. That's the kit that it came from. Now let's show you what I actually did here. Going down for a second. Sorry about moving the camera and stuff. Oh, and there was one other thing that I did snag from another kit. These two gas tanks came off of an Academy 1/35th scale M3A1 Stewart. So I snagged those off of this. Let's see where to start with this. Let's see. Okay, so design-wise, I kind of had a rough idea in my head as to what I wanted to do. I wanted to use the engine. That was where I started. And I actually got the idea for the engine from watching Jay Leno's, so let me back this up a little bit so I don't knock everything over on my table. Jay Leno's Garage. And he has that tank car, which apparently has an M47 or M48 tank engine in it. And I went, ooh, that sounds like a cool idea. And I decided I was going to attempt to try to do something like that, maybe not reproduce that, but do something on my own. So it took a few weeks for me to find the right scale for everything. So I could find the cars that I wanted to do, and and all that kind of stuff, but I couldn't find an engine in the right scale. When I finally found the engine, all I could find at first I thought about using like a radial engine from a World War I plane, or for those of you who are familiar with World War I, DH5, the Albatross, has an inline engine. I thought, oh, that would be really cool, and I could get that in like 1/32 scale or 1/48 scale. But then I couldn't find a car in those scales that I wanted to spend a lot of money on just to beat up and dismantle and make whatever. I couldn't find any real cars in 1/72 scale, so it took me a little bit to kind of find all the pieces and parts that I wanted. I found the 1/35 scale tank engine, got that. Then I started looking for a car. I found the car in 1/35 scale, bought that, and then I started thinking about it. I'm going, I'm gonna need something to put all this on, and that's where I found the truck. I actually found that on eBay. I was able to get that for really cheap, so that's what I went with. You can see I ended up I started off with just kind of putting the body of the car together. Went okay. Got that assembled. I then went and took the chassis for the truck and put just the car on it, just to gauge just how much bigger this was. And just to give you an idea, I actually ended up shortening the frame a good half an inch because it actually stuck out. Like I wanted at least one set of the wheels underneath where the wheel well was initially for the car, but they were like out here, and obviously the car frame was not large enough, so I ended up shortening the frame on the truck to get this wheel underneath the wheel well, and then realizing that I was going to need fenders, because these fender flares for the car itself obviously weren't wide enough. I took the fenders off the truck and applied that to this just to cover that one wheel. The fenders on the car here, so all of this would have connected together, right? It would have been a solid piece along with the front grille and all that kind of stuff. I had to separate those, so that left me gaps. And you're gonna notice here and up front and on the other fender, there were holes where they would have been covered up by the firewall and that kind of stuff. So it looked kind of silly leaving the holes there. So I ended up filling them with milliput. And then as I was doing this, I'm like, I went, well, if I kind of make this a joke, or not a joke, but something I thought that Doug and Charlie would do, and did it in 4 days, then it wouldn't be perfect. So that's why I left the milliput here, like big chunk of Bondo that they just put on there to be able to hold the thing together. The engine fit pretty well in between the transfer case or the transmission and the front end, although I did have to modify that a little bit, and I'll flip this over in a minute. Now obviously the truck itself has a covered section to it in the back. It actually had its own plastic floor, but because I had shortened everything, I said I guess I could have used it if I decided to chop that up, but I went, no, let's really make this look a little bit more authentic. So I decided not to use that, and I ended up using some tongue depressors, and I cut those to the size that I wanted. Added the extra fuel tanks, or the fuel tanks, to the back. I took some of the sprue off of the trucks. Sorry, I can't even think right now. I took some of the sprue and cut it up and ended up melting it to these pieces for the gas lines. And then ran it underneath the car up towards the engine. You'll see the fender flares here don't fit exactly. And then I did the same thing like I did here. I ended up putting Bondo, or Millie put as Bondo, inside the wheel wells to fill those up on the car so that it was just here. Again, I decided it could be a little sloppy and I wasn't too worried about it. Again, you can see more of the Millie put here on the front here as well, just to give this a rushed look. And I think I accomplished that. And also I should preface that this is the first time I've ever done any sort of modification to a kit like this. Matter of fact, when I got started and I started chopping things up and cutting everything, I looked at it and went, this is never going to work. But eventually, kind of put it aside for a day, going to work, coming back, thinking about it. I ended up making it work. These are just the plastic rods that you can buy. And I ran it all the way from the firewall to the front of the car itself, just to give it some rigidity for the hood and to show that there was something else there to hold this up. I thought about actually extending the hood this way. I'm like, nah, let's leave it open so you can actually see the engine and all that kind of stuff. And when I did when I extended the fenders out so that they would actually cover the wheels, I used some plastic card and extended the fender flare out a little bit here so that you could see everything, or so that it would actually cover the wheel instead of being tied up against the engine, which I thought wasn't a good idea. I'm gonna drop this down a little bit. So the front end, so this is the main fender off the truck. I mounted the grill from the car onto that and then added it to the chassis. And I think that actually worked out pretty well. And then the interior was just basic. That went together well, although I am a little annoyed with ICM, and I don't know why they did this, but the steering wheel, if you can see it over here, the steering wheel here came in two pieces. So it had the actual wheel itself as a separate piece, and then you had to glue it to the supports for the steering wheel. I don't know why, what a pain in the ass that was. I actually decided I was going to go with the truck's steering wheel because it was all one piece like this, but it was so much larger than this one, it looked ridiculous. So I decided not to do that. Not that the rest of this build isn't ridiculous, but it just made it look really ridiculous. So there's that. So let's see if I can flip this thing over a little bit on its side here, so you can see what I did down here. Here's the underneath. It's the bottom of the engine. So what I ended up, in order to get the engine to fit in here, I actually had to cut the one brace that would have been there initially for the actual truck engine. And I cut that away. I put a piece of plastic card here for the engine to sit on, and then the back end of the engine actually is glued directly to the transmission, or at least I think that's what that is. It didn't really call it out, but that's what I'm assuming, considering all the crankcase and everything else is all connected to this. Because I shortened the frame, I ended up having to shorten the drive shafts for the first set of back tires so that it would fit, and then it has an additional drive shaft that goes to the second set of back tires. Probably can't see it too well, but right about in here is where I made the cut to shorten the frame. So I did all that. And then, yeah, it was just a matter of painting it. Once I got everything to kind of fit the way I wanted to, here you can see the Bondo or the milliput that I put in there just to kind of fill in that hole, because I didn't want it to be open all the way through. I'll give you a quick look at the interior. The interior, like I said, is really not much of anything. It was a pretty basic car for 1939. So there's that. And then color-wise, I thought about doing like a sand color. I was kind of rooting around in all the paints that I have, and I went, you know what? Colonial red. And that's what I went with. So that's it. That's what I've got. That's kind of how I did this. I'll throw up some photos of the in-process stuff that I did, so you can kind of see what I was working on while I was doing it. And I hope everybody likes this. Again, please like, comment, share the video if you feel it's worthy. Thank you to all my subscribers, and I hope everybody is doing well. And I will talk to you all real soon. Bye.